Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Too Many Guys Soccer Show. We have been on hiatus for a little while, and before we begin with anything, we have to dedicate this show to one of our most frequent and longest-serving guests on this podcast, and that is Patrick Jean Quinteri, otherwise known as Coach G. Unfortunately, Coach G was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer and passed away last week. He was a very, very dear friend of all of us, and to say that we are still processing his passing would be putting it lightly. I know everyone who had any chance to interact with him loved him. He was a fantastic human being, and we're not going to spend much time on this, but just so you know, I hope he's listening to this, and this is for you, and every subsequent show that we do will be dedicated to your honor and your memory. So, G, we love you. I'm wearing the shirt you got from me for my 45th, and all the best. God bless, and God bless you and your family. And I really hope that everyone's able to heal and mend and hug their loved ones. So, G, we love you. And too bad PSG decided to play well on Wednesday. But so let's just jump on in with this. We are here today with the person who I feel like has really carried the content for the past probably 6 months. Professor Matt, how you doing today?
Happy May Day, all. I'm doing all right. The semester is drawing rapidly to a close, but then, of course, summer one starts. And pleased as punch that my club team won the league over the weekend, but as you led off the show with, still very much in mourning for our fallen comrades. So, gee, this one and all of these ones, they're for you, buddy.
Yep, thank you so much, Professor Matt. We are also joined by our well, he's our Scotland correspondent, but he is my rugby guru. Cam, how you doing, brother?
Fantastic, fantastic. Yeah, no, echoing what you guys both said. Um, fantastic to kind of pick this back up again. Honestly, missed G a lot, but I think, we all appreciated him and hopefully Arsenal will win next year and, he'll be
We've been
he'll be
saying
happy up there.
been saying that for a while. Been saying that for
Yeah,
a
I
while.
know, I know.
Yeah,
Maybe it's next year's
yeah.
the year, maybe.
Maybe we should flip it and just be like, we hope the U.S. men's national team craps out of the group stage. Because that might be more likely.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So we're gonna kick this off this week. I know we're lucky to have Cam with us, and so we really haven't had a chance to update on leagues outside of the major ones. But as we all know, who follow this show, and G was also a proponent of this team. Cam is Celtic Cam, and so we're gonna go ahead and kick this off with a bit of a Scotland update and see what's going on there. I felt like with this new Champions League format and with the way Europe has been, I felt like Scotland performed a little bit better this year, and we'll see how they are able to kind of like build up a bit more. I think there's a lot more opportunities for teams now who aren't from the big countries to get a little farther along and further along, excuse me, in Europe. But we can talk about the league as well because it seems like we have yet another championship for the green. So Cam, jump on in, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. 55th wrapped up. Beating Rangers by what was that now? 54, I think, league titles. Just for those who don't know, they died a little bit ago and then they came back to life.
Mm-hmm.
They've got one league title to their name, technically. But no, a really solid season for Celtic. 17 points ahead of second place Rangers. Very commanding season. Super excited to see what happens in terms of Champions League qualification. I mean, the fact that Brendan Rodgers is back and then pulling the same weight that he pulled when he originally came to Celtic is fantastic. Hopefully, we won't see him depart midway through the season again. But otherwise, as I say, great season. Next two games, Rangers this weekend at Castle Grayskull. So we'll see how that game goes. And then after that, we're actually playing third place, Hibs, another team from Edinburgh. So two, pretty interesting games coming up. Not a lot of pressure on us, obviously, but no, as I say, it's been a fantastic season, and I'm interested to see how Brendan Rodgers in his second season back will really see what he can do with the Champions League qualification stages because, as Stead mentioned, Champions League's kind of been shaken up a little bit for the next, this coming year. So
What do you predict as far as how well you think? Because it's going to be the same Big Two, but it looks like Hibs might be able to get, I think, a Conference League spot. So, what do you see happening there, especially with Conference League?
yeah, I'm really excited for Hibs to get into the Aberdeen did a pretty good job in the Conference League this year. I was very impressed. Um, I'm I'm upset. I don't think I'll ever say this again. I'm slightly upset that Hearts didn't make it to the Conference League this year, only because of Shankland. Shankland is an absolutely insane striker. He plays for Hearts. He played in the Euros, usually as a sub this past year. But I really would love to see him in the Conference League, see what he can, prove himself as, especially now that he's a younger player becoming part of the Scottish national team. But in terms of Hibs have been, they've been aggressive this season, especially after last season where they were sitting more middle of the table. It's been interesting to see how they come up, especially with no major manager or no major player changes and no managerial changes. So I'm not sure if there's something happening behind the scenes there, but it's good to see Hibs back up kind of in an area where I think they belong.
What do you foresee? You know, I hate saying it like this, but you see Celtic and Rangers or get into Europe, one of those two teams are both pretty much annually. And if they can get to a knockout stage, that's considered almost a win in Champions League. But we have seen Rangers final in Europa, and do you is that happening again? Because like I feel like Europa League really is much more wide open with the new Champions League format.
Yeah, it definitely is. And I mean, it was interesting, Rangers when they played my for no reason whatsoever, favorite German team in the world in the final that just happened to beat them. Um, they were having a really terrible domestic season.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like they really transferred really all their concentration, understandably, to that European kind of push. And I will say that's something that I think Celtic has baffled over at least for a while over the years, where they put their concentration. Do they divide it equally between Europe and the domestic league, or do they concentrate more in Europe, willing to come second, that kind of thing?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, there's another aspect that I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but there's a lot of quite serious talk about Red Bull investing heavily in Rangers in the next couple of
Mm-hmm.
weeks. So usually it's kind of BS from Rangers in terms of who's investing in them, but this one actually looks like it could be the real deal,
Mm-hmm.
which is really going to make not just the rivalry, the old firm, interesting, but the actual whole league interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure between yourself and Professor Matthew, the impact that having a Red Bull sponsored team has not only on that team but the league itself.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out over the next couple of weeks. And it might give us some more insight into what's going to happen next season.
Well, okay, because that kind of trumps my question because when you talk about Celtic kind of like having to pivot between the league and Europe and everything, but look, if you paid attention to Celtic the last 5 years, they've been winning this league in February. Like this over. It's over. So it's like, does Celtic really need to concentrate so much on the league if it's almost like them winning has in recent times has been a foregone conclusion, primarily because Celtic has been able to maintain, whereas Rangers took that blow. They're able to kind of get one league title, but they really haven't been that competitive in winning the league since they came back up. It's just the fact that Scotland is so top heavy that Rangers are going to at least be in the top three. But could Celtic? Because even if Red Bull does invest, it's not going to be. We're not going to see a Man City type of thing again. That's just not going to happen. Where new owners come in and all of a sudden that team's top 10. You're not going to. You're just not going to. You're not going to see something like that, or top four, I should say. So, do you think can Celtic do that next year? Can they just kind of say, look, we don't have much competition here. We can play some of our younger guys who are coming up and really focus a lot of our attention, just kind of maybe rotate your best players out of the league so they minimize the risks of getting not just fatigue, but getting a knock or getting a pulling a muscle, which is going to happen. Is that something that Celtics should be considering?
So I think a lot of Celtics planning for next season is, and I've never said this before, is actually going to really be determined by what happens with this sponsorship deal.
Okay.
And a big part of that is the sporting director for Rangers is an ex-Red Bull employee. I forget what other clubs he worked at, but he's pretty new to Rangers. That's where I'm thinking this kind of connection first got started. But he has a very close connection with, the Red Bull corporation as a whole. I think if that sponsorship deal works out, Celtic is really going to have to evaluate how they handle the season, um, and be very, very intelligent about it because it could be a situation where, if we're stuck with Europa, fine. I've said this many times. Honestly, Celtic might really benefit for a strong push in Europa rather than just getting into that Champions League qualifying and just dropping out.
I was actually, Cam, I was literally going to say that. They have a squad now that I think could make a deep run in the Europa League. Champions League is great, but and this is also speaking as someone you guys know I follow clubs in Eastern Europe. Sometimes making a deeper run in a lesser tournament than just showing up and getting whatever prize money you get for showing up is ultimately a better scenario. And correct me if I'm wrong, Cam, it's only one guaranteed Champions League spot in Scotland,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And actually, as of this coming year, not anymore. It's not a guaranteed spot anymore. Uh,
Oh, so you would have to get to the qualification playoff.
Qualificate less qualifiers, but and to your point, if Scottish teams were to have a good run at Europa and Conference League, this is where the issue's been. Our coefficient has been dropping.
Mm-hmm.
It was rising for a few years. The past few years, it's been dropping. That's why this year we're not getting that automatic qualification. If we can have a few teams from Scotland, except the Huns, maybe let's go Aberdeen or Hibs, get a good run at Europa and Conference League and push that coefficient up a little bit again, so we can get to a point, where we can have a good run at Champions League. I think that all works out really well. A few years, we get the Europa League run for a couple years, Celtic, because they're going to win the league continuously from now on. And then, after 2, 3 years, we've got that Champions League qualifying spot. We're maybe in a bit of a better, more competitive situation to at least move on to,
Mm-hmm.
groups or something.
Mm-hmm. I feel like if you get, oh, I feel like if you can get to a knockout, I mean, we just look what happened with Villa. You got a puncher's chance. You really
Yeah.
do. You got a puncher's chance to make a little bit of extra noise and send someone home early that may not be planning to be. But let's talk about this investment because you know they say a rising tide raises all ships. Is And look, there's been anybody who's ever watched any Scottish football will see that it is a very entertaining thing to watch. And so you'd hate it to be Red Bulls. That's this catalyst to do this, but money is money. Would because it might not just be Celtic who all of a sudden, or sorry, Rangers that all of a sudden gets a bigger sponsor. It could, and it might be a team like Aberdeen or a team that's got some little bit of history there that they can go, hey, there's something here. They just need maybe another 5,000 seats in their stadium, and we can do a little bit better there. Maybe we can just not sell a player so quickly. Maybe hold on to him a little bit longer so that and pay that player a little bit of extra funds, which can up their sale price so that you can actually bring in more money.
Yeah.
Could you see that possibly occurring? Because it's not like Scotland is in an area that couldn't benefit from surrounding lands, somewhat powerful economies.
Yeah, no, I mean, to kind of go back to the beginning of your question, if that investment would, raise kind of the waters for everyone, um, I I would agree with that, and I have a bit of a hot take here. I think the fact that Rangers have been in such a mess the past few years, a lot of their history is gone.
Mm,
Like I say this literally, unfortunately,
no.
only because I think a club's history even if they're Rangers, is super, super important.
Mm-hmm.
That is one of the basis for me in terms of football. I love
Right.
that about clubs that they have history, that
Mm-hmm.
all that is.
That's why I don't like new Man City fans.
And that's
If
exactly
you're a new Man City fan, I'm like, oh yeah, whatever.
that's exactly it. That's
unless you're
exactly
unless
it.
you're 10 years old, I don't want to hear from you.
Yes. But I think this is giving Rangers the opportunity to kind of wipe the slate clean, force of hand, and sit there and say, we've got all this. We can redesign this completely how we want. We can get any sponsor we want. We can bring in anyone who we want. They don't have to be a Rangers loving Protestant. We can bring in
Mm-hmm.
anyone who we
Right.
want.
Right.
Celtic is still stuck with Dermot McDesmond, who he's got a major stake in Dafabet, who's our sponsor. Dafabet. We're not getting much money from them.
Mm-hmm.
They're on there because there's that tie, and it's
Mm-hmm.
tradition that a chairman has a big say in who the sponsor is, and we've it's either beer or gambling for Celtic apparently over the past
Mm-hmm.
like 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So, my hot take is that Rangers do have an opportunity here to really make something of this. And Celtic, unfortunately, is still stuck in, and as I say, I love traditional football clubs, but this is over the top.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm trying to think of the word, but it's just the same thing over and over again. Nothing's really,
Stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
what'd you say?
Yeah.
Stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
Stagnation.
Thank you. Yes.
We call this stagnation.
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
And that was
exactly.
literally the same problem with if we can the Scotland Eastern European connection. This was Dynamo Kiev up until quite literally the wheels fell off the bus and we were like we have to do things differently. The
Mm-hmm.
Soviet Union collapsed a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
You can't recruit effectively and exclusively Ukrainian team. You have to buy some foreigners.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's a it's not just a valid point, but it's one of those things where you have to go, let's not forget. I mean, I'll put on my American history hat. Let's not forget there are times when these teams that are steeped in history wouldn't sign black players.
Yep.
So, you have to just amend and grow or you're going to die. And it's just the world we live in. And
Yep.
even though the history is extraordinarily strong and it's extraordinarily vivid, it still has to stay as history and a
Well,
team has to evolve.
and good traditions modify themselves to
Right.
the current epoch.
Right.
Uh,
Right. So that's great. So that gives us something to pay attention to moving forward because while it is great to see a team that is universally supported continue to win without healthy competition in the league, it really starts to it's unfortunately that league will start to die. And that's what you don't want to see
Yeah, it
especially
and
does.
because
And as
look,
English food.
and I still say it to this day, I don't care what anybody says. An old firm game, I'd say an old firm game from 15 years ago is the greatest rivalry in football. It is. And I haven't seen anything. You can talk about Argentina. You can talk about, that the run rivalry there. There really aren't any in Brazil. There aren't. There's just too many teams in Brazil. There just aren't any. And then we've seen how dominant teams in England have changed. And you see how. I mean, look, the rise of PSG and what they've done to France has killed French football, in my opinion.
Yes.
And
Agreed.
and so you're hoping that doesn't happen to too many countries because one team decides to maybe not move the needle or the league itself decides to not evolve and try to just keep some level of balance to make it
Yeah.
worth watching. I mean, I know there's people in England who even feel like they, at least I'd say till more recently, I think probably when it was just Man U and then it was just Man City and stuff like that, they were like, I watched the championship. Like it's more competitive,
Yeah.
it's just more exciting to watch. And
Especially this year.
yeah, especially this year. Championship's been great this year. So, you just want to make sure that remains. Because I can
Yeah.
even say, even though the team I support has not been able to be successful at that height, I can say if Manchester United weren't losing a league every now and then when they were at their most dominant in the early 2000s and stuff like that, I can say that it wouldn't be as good. They have to have this. You have to be able to lose.
Yeah.
in order for me to pay attention. Yeah, and
And
most people.
we've had this discussion about German football too.
Yes, yes.
As genuinely entertaining as the Bundesliga is, Bayern's stranglehold on that league for the better
Hmm.
part of a decade ultimately hurt
Hurt the
the
league.
league
Yep, it hurt
and
the
the
league.
national team as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Ditto Italy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
Mm-hmm.
yes, that's a big case.
Yeah.
Ditto
Big
Yeah.
Italy.
case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're almost happy that. I mean, I don't want to say it's a good thing for teams to be brought up on charges and stuff like that, but when Juventus came back and then they were so dominant, it's like having a club like Napoli win is the best thing that could have happened to Italy. It's the best thing. Napoli or Roma, that's the best thing that could have happened for Italy. So,
Yeah.
because I had stopped paying attention completely.
Speaking
Yeah.
as a Napoli fan,
Hmm.
100%.
Yeah. Look, and I like AC Milan, so they
Oh,
haven't
there's
been,
respect. There's
but
some respect there,
yeah.
but it,
I had a Paolo Maldini post. Look, all of my teams I support are which posters I got from magazines my dad would bring back from his overseas trips when he was active duty. That's the only reason why I'm an Arsenal fan. I had an Ian Wright poster.
I'm actually a little shocked you aren't a Napoli fan because that's peak U.S.
I'll
Serbian
tell you this, and there's only
and Maradona times.
and I was this close to being one. When I was 10 years old and my father got stationed to move overseas, we had two possible choices. One was Okinawa, Japan, and one was Napoli. One was Naples.
Ah,
And we wanted to go to Naples. We wanted to go bad. And my dad
Mm.
lobbied and lobbied and lobbied. And they said, no, you got to go to Japan. And so we went to Japan. Had he gotten orders to Naples, you don't think I'd be decked out in Napoli gear, especially at that age? I was playing soccer year round already at that age. I was already playing year round. So I know I would have gone there and been like, whoa, Naples. I would have had jerseys and all that stuff. So absolutely.
that knowing how old you are, that
Mhm.
would have been peak. And again,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Oh, yeah. We would have moved there in 1989.
right for the second title with Maradona. Yeah, no, there's something. If one team has a stranglehold over a league, that's that this is why I make the case that the Portuguese league, in my estimation, is slightly above the French league because at least they have a triopoly, right? It's not just one team; it's one of three.
And I believe for a couple of years, Portugal had actually jumped above France in the UEFA coefficient. They were ranked fifth
They were,
for a couple of seasons.
they
I'm pretty
were,
sure they were.
they were.
So, um, well, let's pivot here, um, because we have to pivot. Let's go ahead and talk about I would say that even though the point differential was quite stark in the Premier League this year, I can honestly say the Premier League was actually somewhat competitive, even with Liverpool winning the way they did. But congratulations to Liverpool. That team was not one of the favorites this season. I don't think they were. I think they were probably fourth. But let's go and congratulate Liverpool. And look, it you got to take away international football for the Ballon d'Or. Mo Salah is the best player in the world.
Yeah, yeah. That's about an understatement.
Mm-hmm.
Historic season. In terms of the preseason odds, I looked this up. We were given a 5% chance by the
Mm-hmm.
bookies.
Mm-hmm.
And look, I came on this program before the season started and said, I all of this we're gonna fall off completely. I don't understand. But I said, we're finishing third and getting a domestic cup at best because this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a transition season. And this is a squad, which I said before the season, I saw holes.
Yeah.
Uh, and the holes, look, that stuff was real. I mean, there's a reason why we went out of the Champions League early, why we couldn't get another cup. But I I said two things at the end of last season when we knew Jurgen was leaving. And part of it was, I don't know, me sort of wish casting. I think that's a good way to put it. I was like, this doesn't feel like when Ferguson left United handing the torch over to David Moyes, who I don't know if the board was ever sold on him being the guy. It was just
Mm-hmm.
Ferguson said, I like him. He's
Mm-hmm.
Scottish, give him the job. Oh, but I'm going to give him my old ass team that totally needs a rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Or like Arsene Wenger leaving your
Mm-hmm.
club, where
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned stagnation earlier. I always respected Arsene Wenger, but he probably should have stepped down 5 years earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Mm-hmm.
it had just gotten very stale.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I mentioned, look, there's a solid core here. And if anything, this is textbook. I think this is how a transition should be done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the other thing is I sort of because Klopp in a very real way resurrected Liverpool. Not that we were
Mm-hmm.
like full on dead.
Right.
I mean, before 2017, I think the summer we bought Joel Matip and Sadio Mane, where I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
interesting. This is
Mm-hmm.
different. The I mean, Europe was different, right? Because we all remembered Istanbul and stuff like. I've seen my team win in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the league, we were like Red Sox fans.
Mm-hmm.
2004, it was just like, when's the goddamn shoe gonna fall off?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I said this could kind of be a Shankly Paisley kind of succession, and even though Arne Slot didn't work under Klopp like Paisley worked under Shankly, it kind of felt like that. The guy who perhaps doesn't win the most stuff, but built the foundation, handing it off to someone that's just going to take it to its next evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I did. I If you asked me in August, I wouldn't have saw this coming. I'm
Mm-hmm.
beyond happy, and I'm even more happy. And I don't want to do too much of the Liverpool stuff because me and Cam are going to get on a separate show where we're going to fully dissect this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good to know that all of the reliable, particularly the reliable journalists that cover my club, Joyce, Ornstein, are all saying, and I guess this is what happens when you don't spend money one summer.
Yeah.
We're actually going to allot funds. So, the holes that do exist that prevent this club from competing on all fronts will actually be addressed. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think we're getting rid of Andy Robertson in the summer. I
Mm-hmm.
don't think he's our starting left back
Mm-hmm.
this time next year. I can
Mm-hmm.
tell you now, Darwin Nunez is not going to be our starter.
No, he's not. Mm-mm.
Uh, and that all elusive, and here's the big thing too: re-upping Van Dyke and
That's
Sal
what I was about to say. Yeah.
4 years and giving us time because
Mm-hmm.
if anything, this buys us time
Mm-hmm.
find their ultimate replacements.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that's critical.
Yeah.
As per Trent, I mentioned this in my Liverpool update. Thanks for the memories.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to go to Madrid, go to Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't pull a Raheem Sterling and fake injuries.
Right.
Like
Right.
I respect if we play you in the Champions League, F you, Trent. But other than
Yeah.
that, there's no
Well, if Trent, let's say you play him in the Champions League and Trent scores, he's not celebrating.
no,
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 he's
no,
not doing that.
no.
Sterling would.
And
Trent
there's
would not.
and there's something which I didn't mention in that video I recorded, but sort of it dawned on me. Well, it dawned on me on Sunday when we won the league. Him leaving is so not like all of the others, like Sterling, Coutinho, Torres,
Torres, yeah.
etc. Suarez.
Suarez.
Although, to be fair, if Suarez wasn't as good as Suarez was, I would have walked him out the door.
Right.
He is the only Liverpool player in the modern era. Kevin Keegan, but that's going back to the 70s,
Yeah.
who can legitimately say, yeah, I'm leaving to go someplace else, but I've won everything I can win here.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
unique. That's different.
Right.
I think Psycho Scouse cult army. Deep this for a second. That's different. Let the young man go.
Mm-hmm.
Like he's done everything we've asked and more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's it, you're right though. It is a different departure. It's a different departure because you're not seeing a guy who's really going to greener pastures or perceived greener pastures. Because look, Madrid is not greener pastures. Madrid, I mean, you can say they're having a quote unquote down year because they're not winning everything, but you can see when they play, they're last year everyone was shocked by Real Madrid's performance.
Mhm.
Everyone was. I think the team we're seeing this year is the team everyone was kind of expecting Real Madrid to be, but probably would be last year.
Yeah,
And bringing in Mbappe, well, you have to give that type of player a chance to acclimatize. And you see, he's actually been playing very well. So
his second half of the season's been
it's been
rad.
phenomenal. It's been
Definitely.
phenomenal. So it's understandable. It's understandable. But I think that when you watched, I think the biggest difference between because look, you can talk about the losses. Liverpool only had 2 losses. Look, Arsenal has 3. That's it. Arsenal has 3 losses. Liverpool has 2. But Arsenal has 13 draws.
Yeah, I was just going to bring that up.
The
You're
draws have killed Arsenal this
you
year.
you had a season this year like we had last year.
Mm-hmm.
Last year we played well, but I swear for 2 months at radically different times of the season,
Mm-hmm.
it's just draw after draw
Draw after
after
draw.
draw.
Yeah,
And it got to the point where the draws just kept feeling like losses because
they are. Yep.
no, you're you're digging that pit.
Right.
And I say this, and I think I've said it before. I did legitimately feel bad for Arsenal this year because
Mm-hmm.
looking at it on the outside, I it was like watching Liverpool in the year of our title defense. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, you're going to get injuries. Everybody
Mm-hmm.
gets injuries,
Yeah.
but the
Mm-hmm.
injuries are all going to be at one position.
Mm-hmm.
You have to start playing people that don't remotely fit into
Right.
on places of the pitch where they shouldn't be.
Yeah, center forward for Arsenal. Yeah.
Legitimately, yeah,
Yeah, it's been that kind of a season. And to say that this season is a failure, I'm on the fence with that. I'm on the fence. And I'm on the fence because Arsenal had so many opportunities to challenge for the league. And you knew that they were not going to challenge for the league 4 games ago. You knew they're not going to challenge for the league. And that was before the Real Madrid triumph.
yeah.
That was before that. And so there really wasn't that much there to say like why can't you, you could talk about the injuries all you want, but the holes that Arsenal had were always going to be goal scoring, and they continue to be goal scoring. Look, Arsenal does not have a goal scorer in the top 20. Not one. Their leading goal scorer is still Kai Havertz. He's still
And he's been
and
missing in
he has been
action for
out and
3 months.
yep, and he's out for the rest of the year. He's still your leading goal scorer with 9 goals. I'm sorry. I just don't think I almost think that they're lucky to be in second. It just shows you that the defense that they have is phenomenal.
Yeah,
They have a fantastic defense, but you don't have a legitimate goal scorer. You're not going to win. So you're not going to win trophies. You're just not going to do it. And, we're sitting around wondering, like, maybe selling Nketiah was a bad idea. I'm not saying he would have got 20 goals, but considering how they've been playing, he might have gotten 12. Might have got 13. But when Saka goes out, you don't really see a change in the goal scoring. So you're going, okay, so he's clearly not pivotal to the goal scoring. What's the problem here? The problem is that you never had that person there in the first place. But even Gabriel Jesus, his best times at Man City, he was playing on the wing.
yep. He was out
He
wide.
was on the wing.
He was out wide.
Right. And he caught the Arsenal disease as soon as he got here. Not that he was already kind of getting it at City, but he's out. He's done. The guy cannot look. Availability is the most important thing when it comes to being great. And you're just not available. And I can go on and on about injuries, but I'm not, because that happens every year at Arsenal. It happens every year. Arsenal leads the league in 2 categories. First team players spent out due to injury, and leading the league for weeks without winning the trophy. They've lapped everybody on that. Arsenal loves being in first place in January, February, and March. They love that. So I'm not gonna beat up on Arsenal, but I think I saw something today that made me angry, even though I'm happy where Arsenal is, considering how Arsenal's had to build back up since. Because look, you have to kind of, I hate to do this, but you got to dismiss a little bit the FA Cup wins that they've had the last couple of years of anger. You
Oh yeah, no,
you gotta dismiss
that
them a little bit. You gotta dismiss. I was happy they won because they hadn't won a trophy in a long time. But Arsenal, you have lost, I believe, 2 Europa League finals, and you have had legitimate chances to win the cup, to win the Premier League trophy, and you tied your way to losing it. And let's look at the other teams this season. Manchester United and Spurs are having 2 of the worst seasons they've ever had in the Premier League, and it looks like one of the 2 of them is going to win the Europa League. It
yeah,
looks like it.
we're gonna talk
Because
about
if
that.
they both
Yeah,
final,
yeah.
now
One of them's
let's
getting through the back.
yeah, let's not forget who's probably going to win the Conference League. It's probably going to be Chelsea. Okay? Who's probably going to win the FA Cup? It's probably going to be Manchester City, because they're playing Palace. I mean,
Well, but to be fair, Palace is their bogey team.
I am putting all of my good energy into Palace,
But to be fair, that would be very on brand of City, having not a great season and
exactly,
yet bumming their way to one.
exactly. And let's not forget, currently 3rd place is Newcastle. They won a trophy this year.
Yep.
So you're going to look
Yep.
at, let's talk about this. You're going to possibly see Liverpool, Newcastle, Man City, Chelsea, and Man U or Spurs. So that's 5 teams winning trophies this year. 4 of them are below you in the title race, and didn't even qualify for Champions League. They didn't even qualify. And Arsenal might be asked out next week.
Yeah.
That stung. That stung. That's why I'm like, I'm trying to be pleased the fact that we did have a nice moment this year with beating Real Madrid twice. That was nice. That was fun. That was the high that I have not experienced with this club. Really, because the Arteta FA Cup was the COVID year, and it's hard to get happy about that because there's no one can celebrate with them. So there's still like this kind of like, I'm happy this team is good. They're going to spend more money this year. They can beat anybody in the world, not on their day. They can beat anybody in the world. They can. And you might walk away this season empty-handed. And then, do you sell Saliba? Do you?
Well,
I mean,
that's the
so you
that
see why I'm a little bit like, I'm not feeling good right now.
this is going to be a very important summer for you guys. And it's going to
Unbelievably
be an
important.
important summer for the manager because I have defended
So
Arteta
have I. So have
on
I.
this podcast, but and I'm glad you went there, not me. If the scenario you throw out there does come to pass, oh, this is legit pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And the board, yeah, okay, all the injuries happen to this one place, but why did you think going into a season when you're competing for a title that only Kai Havertz and Jesus, like these are your 2 options? No,
Kai Havertz is a false 9 too. He's not a striker.
and even that, like Arteta Arteta sort of wants him almost like
He
his
loves
role
him.
is
He
it's like
loves him.
it's Bobby Firmino, but if he was German and on steroids.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is Bobby, if you designed a false 9 in a laboratory, if Baron Frankenstein worked in the world of football, it'd be Bobby Firmino.
Mm-hmm.
Havertz ain't that guy. I remember Havertz as a 10.
Mm-hmm.
Germany. I think that may
Yeah, as a
actually
10.
be,
Yeah.
or is it as crazy as it sounds, old school second striker?
Mm-hmm.
Look when he plays with Germany and
With a like kind of a
Rodri up
4-4-2.
top.
Yeah.
Yup.
Yeah. And we've been yelling about that, me and the Arsenal buddies, like to go to a 4-4-2. I
So there's gonna be pressure on the manager. There's gonna be pressure on the board,
mm-hmm.
and the Saliba thing. Here's the common sense says no. You do not sell him.
Right.
Here's the problem, and this is why with the Trent situation, I had let that go since September.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants him? They do.
And they're willing to spend £100 million on him.
They here's and this may be the worst part of it. I assume because we know Carlo is effectively going into semi-retirement
Mm-hmm.
Brazil on June 1st.
Mm-hmm.
For him, by the way.
Yeah, good for him. Absolutely. Carlo's got nothing to prove.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Xabi Alonso's probably the successor.
Mm-hmm.
Saliba's great in a back four. Think about his profile as a right-sided center back in a back three. He's the prototype.
Mm-hmm. He is.
He's the
He
prototype.
really is. Yeah. Yeah. So that's the thing. But we talk about the board, and look, I don't know if Arsenal supporters are. This is one of the clubs, a big club, in Europe that might even be the only one where the board and the ownership do not want to win as nearly much as the fans want them to. There's just this feeling that the people who run this team are fully happy with the way things are going. And they couldn't care less about winning trophies. And that's the part that's scary. Now, is that still true? I don't know. But when there's a video that goes out where you have Kroenke's son basically talking to the team saying, no, we're serious about winning. So that means you have to have the ownership group convince the players that they care about being a winning club. You have Arsenal's got fans with all over the world with plenty of deep pockets. I don't know. I've seen 4 different guys saying I'd love to buy that team. It's really, really hard to it's really, really hard to see when you have a good season and that you don't capitalize on that season, because we have this fear that it's going to be gone. And we're going to be right back to saying, hey, isn't this great? We finished in the top 4. Hey, isn't this great? We semifinaled in Champions League. Hey, isn't this great that we finaled at an FA Cup, or we won an FA Cup or a Man City Cup? It's like we don't want to go back to that ceiling, but there's this fear that because of the people who run this team, we're going to go back to that ceiling. And that's the part that scares me.
And I know Kroenke's son apparently cares a bit more.
Apparently, because I know old man doesn't.
But well, we know that
Yeah, he's a Rams fan.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing, but it's the same issue, except I think less severe at Liverpool. Because look, I mean, I've said this before. I'm not FSG out in so much that if FSG is going to be out, what's going to replace them?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not, some of the criticism leveled at them, especially because look, they look at the club as part of a portfolio.
Mm-hmm.
And in that universe, top 4 is just fine.
Fine.
As long as you have top 4 Champions League and jersey sales, be cool.
You're good.
We're like that's always a specter there. And we know the way your ownership group operates because look, it took you guys a decade. They gave you a new stadium, but you had to pay for that.
And it took a decade to pay. It took a decade to pay for it.
Yeah.
It took a decade to pay for it. Yep. So, I don't want to beat up on them because look, we only lost 3 times this season. I mean, there's a
Yeah,
lot. I mean, and you got to think, Arsenal hadn't beat Real Madrid in I think 19 years. Arsenal hadn't
no,
semifinal in the Champions League in 15 years. So you have to be pleased with that. You have to be pleased with that. And I said I would be more pleased hadn't I see 5 other Premier League teams who could walk away with silverware this year. But it's just, somewhat disappointing. But
this is gonna this is gonna be a huge summer for your boys, and
yeah.
season's gonna be huge. And
Yeah. Well, do
as
you
crazy
sell
as
Saliba and buy Isak?
that's a conundrum, but then there's the other question too. Like, and look, I'm
Is
I'm
Newcastle
so
even going to sell
I'm
him?
so glad he's Polish. My boy Clevier has now become a folk hero
Oh
in
God.
in North
His
London.
his jersey. You seen his jersey sales go up. Yeah.
But having watched him with the Polish national team and knowing who he was, and look, I was telling every Arsenal fan I knew during the summer, don't sell him because he's useful. If you're also going to have to buy another center back
We do.
because
Mm-hmm.
you can't go you can't go into a season with your top two choices being Quivior or Gabrielle. And look,
It's look,
you've
first
turned
of all,
Ben White into a right back. Tomiyasu, who can also be a center back, is
yeah,
constantly injured.
yeah. And look, Gabriel's probably gone. He's probably gone. So you're
Yeah,
looking at your 2 starting
yeah,
center backs possibly being
yeah.
Kior and Ben White.
And that's a problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem.
That's a problem. That's a problem. And we got some kids coming up. I mean, Arsenal's their U18s and they got some kids down there that can ball. But again, all of it remains to be seen. But I'm not going to sit here and pound on him. I'm just a nervous guy who just wants a good reason to cheer again. So, but I want to point out one more thing about the Premier League before we move out of here. But there's something that I've always paid attention to in the Premier League that garnered no attention this year, and it's disappointing. There was absolutely no relegation race this year. There was
I'm
none.
glad. So
There was none.
I'm glad you touched on this topic because I will step up to the plate. And the fact that you might have an all England Europa League final and Chelsea is most likely going to win the Conference League. Anyone who says the Premier League is not the best league in Europe,
Yeah,
please be
just
quiet.
just stop.
And
Yeah, just stop.
even though the title race seemed out of whack, in terms of third through, I don't know, 12th, really,
Mm-hmm.
it's been the most
It's
competitive
been very
in
competitive.
this league. 1 through 12 can beat each other on
Yep.
any given weekend.
I would go as far as to say 13 now because Wolves have won their last 5.
Yeah, they've risen.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that scares me long term about the health of the league is it, the last time we've had teams get promoted and even 2 of them stick around,
Yeah,
been about a decade.
it's been a long time.
It's a real problem. And
Yeah.
I called Ipswich simply because I was like, there's just not enough talent here.
Mm-hmm.
I called Leicester City. Everyone was like, "Oh, they'll stay up." And I'm
Oh,
like,
UNG were
why
on
should
Leicester. So y'all, G was
why
like, nah,
should
they're terrible.
why should the same squad that I saw go down 2 years ago stay up now? That makes
Mm-hmm.
no sense.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little surprised about Southampton
I
because
was too.
they kind of switched it up, But
Mm-hmm.
this is a legit problem, and I'll be
Mm-hmm.
honest. We know 2 of the 3 teams getting promoted:
Yeah,
Leeds, Burnley.
Burnley.
I hate to say it, I can see the same scenario
I can too.
here
I
because
can too.
I look at this Burnley team and I'm like, you're the same guys that
Mm-hmm.
Company brought up, and I don't think you're still Premier League level. And
No,
kind of the same thing with
with
Leeds.
Leeds, yeah.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
when we're on the topic of Leeds, though, I do have a legit question. I kind of wish Chelsea Mike was here.
Yeah.
Daniel Farker Is he the best championship manager of all time?
I
No, it's a legit
was
question.
gonna. But cause the reason why it's a legit question because it's probably true.
Yeah.
It's probably true. Look, the guy looks like a supervillain in an action movie, but
No, so when he was at Norwich, this is when my aunt first started getting into the game, and so
mhm.
Liverpool was playing Norwich, and she was like, "Why does Norwich's manager look like a German Hell's Angel?" And I'm like,
That's
"That's
I'm
because
telling
he
you,
is
he
effectively."
is.
Like,
But yeah, he might very well be.
but here's the other part of that equation. He has brought successive teams up, but then he immediately goes down.
Goes right back down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, when Chelsea Mike was on about how much he couldn't stand Norwich because they're so content with being the 21st or 20th best team in England that it just drove him nuts. But that was Farke's team.
Yep.
And you're looking at Leeds, and look, I think the Premier League's better with Leeds in the Premier League just because of their
I
history
agree.
prior to when they
I
were
agree.
just because of the League One history. But you're looking at the other teams that are sort of entrenched in the Premier League, and in order for them to remain, they have to replace someone. Well, who are they going to replace? It's the most logical choice would have been a team like a Bournemouth or a Brentford, teams that have very small fan bases, teams that have very small stadiums, but those teams are run so well.
I was just about to say the only way that we can avoid this situation of the constant yo-yos, everyone in the championship, look at Brentford and look at them really goddamn hard
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
take notes.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing with Brentford was, and I don't watch nearly enough of the championship,
Mm-hmm.
but you as a Arsenal fan, you would know this because they're your neighbors, effectively.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
You guys apparently played them every or would play them every year in the preseason
Mm-hmm.
before they got promoted. I heard about Brentford for time. It was like
Right.
they're building something, they're
Right.
building something, they're building something.
Right. Yeah.
And they stayed in the championship for a little while,
Right.
maybe staying in the championship 2, 3
Right.
seasons and building that infrastructure, that core,
Right.
rather than going up immediately, might
Right.
be the better play because when you do go up, you can stay up.
You can stay up. But we all have to remember they didn't qualify this year, but they've been slowly doing exactly what you said. And they did qualify for the playoff. In 2 years, Sunderland's going to be back in the Premier League. That's
Yep.
my prediction. They're
Yeah,
going to be
they are
back in the Premier League.
in
And
terms.
but they're a big club in England.
Yeah,
They are. And they have one of the best stadiums in the country. And they have a rabid fan base. And
it's
look, and I will say this, there's nothing better for a team than a good documentary.
yeah. If anything, that sold the brand to
Mm-hmm.
Americans that probably
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't even
I
know.
have so many friends who hate on Wrexham because of Sunderland Till I Die. They're
And
basically they're like, no, 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 no. I like Sunderland. They're copying. I'm hearing it left and right.
and see, this will, if they do go up, this will be former Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson's parachute back
Mm-hmm.
into the Premier League.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
go there and
Yeah. And the
get
only reason,
all.
right, and the only reason why I don't think Sunderland's going to go up this year is because not only Sheffield's played very, very well in the championship, and Sunderland has a horrible record at Wembley.
Yes,
They
they do.
have a
They're
horrible record.
getting through the promotion relegation playoff has been an issue.
Has been a nightmare for them.
I'll tell you,
Absolutely.
I'll tell you what team I wouldn't mind being the third. Uh Sunderland, obviously. There's
Mm-hmm.
I get that. Blackburn, and that's simply showing my
Yeah.
age and when I came up.
Yeah, I
They were
understand. I
they
can't
were
disagree with you.
they were part of the furniture for me coming up, and as
Mm-hmm.
Chelsea Mike would always remind me, oh,
Yeah.
the same amount of Premier League champions
Yeah.
as Liverpool, and it's like, yes, yes, under former Liverpool manager and legend Kenny Dalglish, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
nevertheless, yeah, like,
They still
yeah,
won.
no, they
They still
still
won.
won, yeah,
And I
no,
think they had like 95 points. Like they won.
oh no, they killed that
They
league.
killed that league.
They
Yeah.
killed the league that season.
Right.
So yeah,
And
I mean, I'm really looking forward to the promotion playoffs this year
I
because
am too. I
I
am
think
too.
it's one of the more even.
Yeah, agreed.
ones we've seen in a while.
Hmm.
And I sort of agree with you in so much that Sunderland has put themselves, even if they don't get promoted this year,
Hmm.
when they do, I think much like Brentford, much like Bournemouth, they're gonna come up and gonna stay.
Yeah.
You
And
know,
they know how to do it. You know,
exactly.
they've been there for a while. They had several seasons where they weren't competing necessarily for any titles, but they were finishing 10th, 11th, 12th. They weren't, squeaking by. They weren't pulling a Wigan where, which I'm not gonna lie, Wigan's is the reason why I love the relegation battle, because those years under Roberto Martinez when they were able to stay up were absolutely amazing. But that I think the fact that there was no relegation issue this year beyond it, but for the teams who are going to go down, will in the long run pose as something negative. I didn't think about it in that respect, but it makes complete sense that that would actually cause more of
I
an issue with
I
championship teams. Yeah.
I think that's a sign of not that the league is unhealthy, but it's something that it sort of has to be addressed because when you
Yeah.
constantly
You're
when
yo-yoing.
bottom three are just yo-yoing,
Hmm.
that's not good. And
That's
that's
not good.
not good for the clubs immediately above them.
No,
You go
it's
back to
not.
this question of stagnation, like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know,
I mean, you can see a team like Palace going, well, we'll finish 13th.
exactly, and they're cool with it. It's
Cool with
like
that. Yeah.
we get 35 points. I
All right. Oh, who used to do that? I think West Brom. Oh, they used to do that
Yes,
all the
constantly,
time. Who was
constantly,
the coach of
yeah.
that? I forgot who the coach was, but man, he used to do that constantly. He would get 40 points, and then that team wouldn't get out of bed anymore in May. That was it for
Yep,
them. They're like, we're good.
yep.
See you next year. Now that we talked about that, and we were touching on these trophies that could possibly happen for all these British English teams. Let's go ahead and start at the bottom. Let's talk about the because I'm going to I don't want to release my pain yet, but let's talk about the conference league. And again, I have yo-yoed on the conference league now because I won't say yo-yo, that's not the right way to say it, but I remember we were talking about this a while ago when the conference league first started and how we weren't too high on it. But then after that season was going, we're like, wait a minute, this is actually great. This is a great thing. But when you're seeing I don't want to include West Ham because West Ham they are English, but they're West Ham, and they hadn't won anything in what 60 years. So it was good for them to win that trophy. But
I
to
know.
see a club
I know
like
what it is.
Chelsea, that's not. I don't
See,
want to see that.
I think this is more of an aberration.
I hope so.
Chelsea, because Chelsea should be there. Let's be real.
Hmm.
Uh and my hope is that this is a kind of one-off thing. I think it's kind of crazy because once the Polish teams went out, I was like, this is Chelsea's. But then I was at least following the score lines today, and I was like, wait a minute. This potential final, because I'm assuming it's going to be them and Betis. I'm going to
Hmm.
be the world's biggest Real Betis fan for an.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
It's going to be a weird final because you realize this is going to be the Anthony versus Sancho final.
Hmm.
It's gonna be the Man United in exile, Man United flops in exile final. Uh yeah, it's the fact that Chelsea's there because let's imagine they're out of the equation. Let's say like the final would be Betis Florentina.
Yeah.
Awesome. Right, that's what
Would
that
love that. Would
design.
love that.
And I do think I was talking to Cam off air over beers not too long ago about this. The whole Chelsea thing does kind of force a little bit of a conversation about whether there should be a conference league place for the top maybe four leagues.
Hmm.
But then you brought up West Ham, right?
Right.
You know, and
And,
that's where
and
it's
and
like
look, Roma
Roma.
hadn't won anything, so
Exactly. So like it's kind of a slippery slope. I think in the case of Chelsea, all right, you gonna win a trophy this year. That's cool. But you have to look yourself in the mirror and it's like, why the hell are you in the conference league
yeah.
with the amount of money
Right.
the giant bloated squad that you have.
Right. Right.
Like
How many
that's the
8-year
bigger
contracts you have?
question.
Yeah.
It's like, nah, I don't think the conference league's to blame here. I think post
Oh yeah.
Ruben Abram Ruben
Yeah.
that Chelsea is to
Yeah.
blame here.
Right. I mean, I guess it's Chelsea's to blame for that. And
Yeah.
and I hope this is a one-off. I really do. I hope this is a one-off. Because like the thing is this, I who doesn't want to see teams like Chelsea and Spurs and Man U finish way down on the table? That's great. I love seeing that. But that also puts them in this competition where if you look at the other teams that qualified for this, most average fans can't even pronounce the names of most of those teams.
Yes.
So, I'm looking through going, it would be cool to see, oh, that'd be great if Panathinaikos could win this.
Mhm.
That would be great. But, you know, but even when you looked at the group stage at the Conference League, Chelsea had they blew everybody away. So it was still just another like y'all aren't supposed to be here. You're basically, you're Danny Almonte, who's a 14-year-old pitching in the Little League World Series. You
Yep.
just shouldn't be there. And so it's just not right. And so I think I'm hoping this is a one-off, but it completely turned me off from this competition. Basically, after the group stage, I was like, all right, well, and I'm sorry, the league stage, I was like,
I
all
will
right,
keep
I'm
it
not
real.
watching this.
Once the Polish clubs left, I plugged out too.
Yeah. Well, that's all I'm gonna say about conference. If I mean, the fact that Chelsea Mike is paying no attention to this lets you know that's probably more right of what you're saying. That Chelsea
I
fans
think
hopefully should look in the mirror and go, "This is basically not a good trophy. We shouldn't even be here.
yeah.
We stole some kids' lunch money and bought this, and it's really not right." Yeah. All right. Well, let's just leave that alone then. Bump them. Not that I want to talk about this, considering that you might get a Spurs Man U final, but
Uh,
you're looking at the Europa League too, and you can honestly say that I don't feel like Spurs and Man U had a difficult time getting to these games either.
so
Because look, we saw tremendous runs by teams that don't normally get far in Europe at all. We don't. But we're not seeing Valencia. We're not seeing Freiburg or we're not seeing you're not seeing a Marseille.
no,
You're not seeing
or
them.
even a late aughts, early teens like Shakhtar
A
Donetsk.
Shakhtar, yeah, you're not seeing them. So that's or a Red Star Belgrade. You're not seeing those clubs playing against these teams that can easily beat them. So I'm looking at this going, you're in a semifinal. You're playing against a team that probably doesn't even have a field that's not covered in bad weather for 10
Well,
months of the year.
well,
And
hold on. So
I know that's
the 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 second legs of these ties, I think, are fascinating. Because here's the thing: Tottenham won big, and look, Tottenham's problem isn't scoring goals.
no, it's keep another team from
Keep
scoring
other
goals.
teams
Yeah.
from scoring goals.
Mm-hmm.
They won big in North London.
Mm-hmm.
United won against, granted, a 9-man by the end of the match, a 9-man Betis. Excuse me, 10-man
Athletic,
Betis.
Atletico.
Athletica.
Athletic Club. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the what am I talking about? Yeah, Athletic.
Yeah.
Bilbao. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wrong Spanish thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. This is why I think these second legs are interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Spurs do, to be fair, have to go to a stadium in not even Oslo, some
No.
random,
I mean,
random ass city in Norway.
the fact that you can say Northern Norway
Yeah,
makes it almost like a double whammy there.
yeah. So you gotta go to some random ass city in northern Norway and play on, and this has been a lot of clubs' bugaboos in this stadium with this stupid astroturf that
Mm-hmm.
isn't fully thawed out yet.
Mm-hmm.
A 2-goal advantage? I don't know.
Yeah.
And then here's the thing with United, and I think United probably have a better chance.
Because they were already
But
on the road, you know.
no, but this is classic United though. So if you look at their record away from Old Trafford this year, it actually doesn't totally suck.
No.
But they can't play in front of their home fans
Mm-mm.
because they're afflicted with some psychopaths here. Like
Yeah.
that, like I I don't think either of these ties are over.
I hope not. I
If you put
hope
a gun to
not.
my head and said, "Who do you think's going to be the final?" I'd say Spurs and United.
hmm
I actually don't think these ties are over because
hmm
if Bilbao scores one goal early at Old
Early.
Trafford,
Yeah.
oh, the whole mood of that thing changes.
Yeah. And look, Onana will make some amazing saves and he will make some boneheaded plays.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah.
not sure, it's a kind of which one's gonna be there.
And they scored 3 goals today, none from any of their forward players. Erasmus Højlund may be the worst striker I've ever seen in the Premier League. I'm not being shady, United fans, Coach
Yeah,
Pat, Mike. I'm not being shady.
right.
He's what does he do?
hmm
I
hmm
like so I don't think these ties are necessarily a wrap.
Okay.
And I think the same thing can be said about the Champions League.
Yeah, we're going there next. I mean, of course, I love it when the team that nobody's heard of wins. I love that. I relish in that. So, of course, I'm going to be pulling for the away teams, or sorry, the non-English teams in this situation, just because I think it'll be more fun. Um, and but I think Arsenal fans, granted, I never got into the whole Arsenal Spurs thing because when I really got into this, Spurs were a complete non-factor and everything. So I don't have this anti-Spurs thing that so many Arsenal fans do.
You're also not a Londoner,
No,
so
I'm not, and I'm not. I'm not.
exactly.
I'm not. I'm as American as they come, and so I'm not a Londoner. And when I got to English football, it was Man United. That
Yeah,
was it. It was Arsenal, Man
public
United.
enemy number
That's
one.
what it
Yeah,
was. That's what it
it's
was.
it's like the Liverpool Everton rivalry.
Right.
It's like, yeah, I mean they're our crosstown rivals, but like,
Right.
is a hammer and a nail a rivalry?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I have no feelings about.
Right. I felt like Spurs had a little run where they were finishing ahead of Arsenal for a few years, and that was fun. But I still go back to when Arsenal won the Premier League on Spurs ground, and Thierry Henry is one of the they drew that game, but Arsenal still won the league on their home ground. And the way Henry says, think about it, you're celebrating a draw. So that's who Spurs are to me. So
I think
if they were to win this cup, I wouldn't be like, I can't believe Spurs won Europa League before Arsenal did. I'd be like, they had an easy run. They got their trophy. So what? They're going to Champions League next year. They'll get knocked out in the league stage. So whatever. It won't be that big of a deal
them getting to Europe may be the worst thing for them.
for them.
As much as I like Ange Postecoglou, the human being,
Yeah.
and I look, his brand of football is exciting,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't translate
Mm-mm.
to England. Like
No.
he needs to go. He needs to go to Germany.
Yeah, I was about to
The
say,
Bundesliga would be great for him.
go to Schalke. They need a
Yeah,
manager.
straight up, the Bundesliga or German football, even the second tier would be great for you.
hmm
Like him prolonging his stay
Yeah, that would not
might
be
not
good.
be good for
Yeah.
Spurs long term.
Yeah. Well, I think if Spurs were wise, they would say, thank you for getting us here. And,
Do what Man United didn't do with Eric Ten Hag.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You won the
yeah.
FA Cup. Cool. Thank
Cool.
you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Yep. Thank you very much. Yeah. Well, all right.
Do you
It's
want
getting
to
late.
start with? Do you want to start with?
Yeah, I do because I want because what happened yesterday was so much better. Um,
Yes.
I mean that was a phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal game. But I mean, I, Arsenal. I don't know. Were you tired? Did you not have any? I don't know because they didn't seem to have any legs that game. They're lucky they didn't lose 4-0.
So that match could have gotten out of hand
Out of hand.
real quick.
Yeah. And this is how bad it was that no one is lamenting the offsides call.
Mm-hmm.
It was a lazy play by a forward who didn't, because if you watch that play, Paris did not do a trap.
Nope.
PSG lined up, Arsenal came forward, they lined up, and then they ran the play. PSG didn't move. They didn't step up as the ball was being kicked. You didn't get into position. And you were that offsides line was right here. Split your eyes right down the middle. You didn't get into position. That drives me insane. It drives me insane. The fact that you were offsides on a set piece when the other team does not do a trap is just unexcusable. It's unexcusable. And after that, that was it. That was it. They really didn't have much the rest of the game. If it wasn't for Arsenal's defense, if it wasn't for David Raya, Arsenal would have lost that game 3-0 or 4-0. They even hit
So
the post twice, I think.
they did. And the non-penalty call against my boy Georgian Jesus, that was I had no problem with it not being called a penalty, but if it was called a penalty, would you really have like lost your mind?
I don't know. I'm not a fan of penalties being any sort of way being pivotal to a game. I'm not a fan of it. So I'm kind of like, get up. You didn't get a call. Get up. Get up. You're getting your ass handed to you. Get up and play.
So what I saw over the full 90 minutes is as follows. And remember, we got knocked out by PSG.
Mm-hmm.
And it's weird because the two of us have come on this podcast
Oh yeah.
and been like, I don't trust PSG.
No.
I will raise my hand and look, I don't think they're winning this tournament.
Right.
But Enrique, I apologize.
Mm-hmm.
You're building something there.
But see again, that goes back to our earlier points we were making about this team is they finally decided not to buy the Champions League.
Yep.
And now they look like they have a legitimate chance to win the Champions League because they're not trying to buy it. And they're building something. They're building something. And also this what worries me even more about the next leg is they won France 2 months ago.
Oh
so,
yeah. So
they don't have to
yeah.
They could play 4 dudes if they feel like it. Who cares? Who cares? There's no reason. French football is one of the most inconsequential leagues in the world that considers themselves to be a top league. You don't matter. And the league doesn't matter. And it hasn't mattered. And no one even knows the point differential between first and second because everyone stopped watching that league before it even began because you knew it was a foregone conclusion because the other French teams are not really putting out talent to the point where they're using to build their teams. They're trying to see who they can sell to England because France has the most in-depth talent in the world is coming out of France. So
it's also effectively become a feeder league.
It's a feeder league.
And not just England, Spain.
Oh, everywhere.
Germany,
yeah. Italy.
Italy.
Yeah. But you got French guys in Portugal.
Even some of the I was gonna say some of the B Tech guys are showing up in places like Ukraine now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, why are you here? And it's like, well, you can't. Not everyone can go to England, right?
Right. Right.
You show up here,
right?
What I noticed, so a lot of Arsenal's issues, and it's not just the fact that you don't have a recognized striker. I can't believe I'm going to say this. Thomas Partey is way more important to the setup of your team.
And nobody wants to admit it. No one wants to admit it.
When you had Rice and Moreno that further back, you effectively, it wasn't just, well, we're Arsenal, we don't have a recognizable striker. You almost didn't even have your recognizable midfield.
Mm-hmm.
Because as much as I rate Rice, he's not really a 6, he's not really an 8, he's this hybrid guy.
Right.
And when he's further up the pitch doing that hybrid role, I think that's him at his best.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what the deal with Odegaard is. Like, he's not looked remotely the same since the injury.
He hasn't, and I think that's probably exactly what it is. And Odegaard was completely a non-factor this game, a
Yeah,
complete non-factor. He was completely out, and he should have been taken out of the game early. He should have been taken out of the game. He should have been subbed out. And there's it is disappointing. It is disappointing. But again, the only thing that gives us life is the fact that you're only down one goal.
you're down one goal.
Only down one goal. And hopefully that could have been like, because you have not looked good in the Premier League in the past month. You have not looked good. You've had 3 draws in the Premier League. And hopefully the Ipswich game can at least give you some like, okay, we know we can still play because we beat those, can't name 2 guys on that team. And well, but we'll see what happens this weekend. I think the game this weekend is actually very important. I think it's a very important game to get the confidence in the squad. Let them kind of go, okay, we worked out whatever was in us. Now we're ready to go. Let's go to Paris and play. I'm sorry, PSG is not a hard place to play. It's just not.
No,
And
I wouldn't be afraid of, the home setting.
no.
It's so PSG looked so much better, and it was the same thing against us when
Mm-hmm.
they had the ball.
Mm-hmm.
But their defense, as good as this is where I think it's a great equalizer. We know how good Arsenal's defense is.
Mm-hmm.
PSG's defense wasn't challenged at all, but you
Mm-hmm.
saw those, like, it looks a little fragile.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hakimi is an old school, 4-4-2 wing back
Right.
masquerading as a right back.
Right.
Marquinhos is really tiny. That's good
Mm-hmm.
for brain farts. Like, it as good as Donnarumma is, I think
Yeah,
his
he's amazing.
protection. I'm not totally sold on his protection.
Mm-hmm.
It's just you guys gotta make sure you get that first goal.
Yeah, I was gonna say
That's it.
Arsenal need to score in 30 minutes.
Yeah, if you get that first goal,
Then it's
okay.
all
Everything,
over. Everything's
everything's there.
yeah.
Uh,
But you got to score in 30 minutes. You do. You
gotta
have to
score.
score.
You
Yeah.
have to score in the first half.
Yeah. And it would be great if Odegaard could be the one to score because I feel like Odegaard is someone that's a momentum kind of player. And when he
He's a
sort of loses
confidence
he's a
guy.
confidence guy.
Yeah.
So if he loses it early in a game, he doesn't seem to know how to get himself back into it.
Do we know the severity of the Dembele injury?
No, that hasn't been
If
reported yet.
he doesn't play, that's
Yeah.
big.
I don't think we'll know definitively about that until probably Monday or Tuesday. I just don't think we'll know. But it's because of the Real Madrid game, it's hard to not still believe that they have a shot.
Mm-hmm.
So there is definitely, and we got to remember too, Premier League teams don't stay down that long. So I'm hoping that barring any catastrophic injury, I thought the best thing Arsenal has ever done since they brought this kid up was telling Saka to go away. Go away. You have an injury. You're going to get surgery. And I don't want you. Arteta didn't even want him in the facility. He's like, no, you need to stay away. We'll bring you back when we need to bring you back. Then we'll bring you back. But he had been cleared way longer than before he came back. And then he played him 60 minutes and yanked him out of the game. That's finally you're not over because last year they ran him into the ground.
Yeah.
So that's been great. Arsenal still do lack some level of depth, though. There's still some areas where Arsenal is hiding the fact that they may not be as good as they should be in order to be able to compete at this level. That being said, after what I saw yesterday, I don't think anybody on this side of the bracket is going to win the Champions League.
I'm glad
I'm
you
sorry.
said that because this semifinal should be, and this is no disrespect to
This should be the final.
or PSG. What I saw yesterday, that should have been the final. I've been talking up Inter Milan since the beginning because I love how this team is constructed. They can do we're going to sit back, defend, dark arts, Italian stuff, but
Mhm.
they have guys who can genuinely hurt you
Mhm.
I mean, they can score goals. And there was a point yesterday where I was like, what did I tell you all about Milan? And then
Mhm.
I was 15 minutes later, I was like, that aged really bad because Yamal isn't a human.
Well, we're hold off on him. We're gonna talk about him later. But go ahead.
Uh that was one of the best semifinals I've
I've
watched
ever seen.
long, long time.
Look, this is what happened to me. Okay. Um, so and my school schedule isn't over until 4:10. That's when my last class is over. 4:10.
Okay.
So my school is I'll just say the ethnic makeup of my school loves soccer, if you get my drift.
Okay.
So I probably had to reprimand 3 or 4 students who were streaming the game during math class. And of course, I said, I didn't tell you to turn it off. I just said to go to the other screen because I got kids looking at me. They're like, I'm pointing, so I run over and look. And so, of course, once the announcements came on, boom, I put it on my big screen, and we were watching that game. And I sat there, and it was 2-2, and I said, "Watch, Barcelona's about to go up 3-2 right now." And the next play, the next series, Inter goes up 3-2. I put my hands up and said, okay, guys, don't ever listen to me again. I don't know anything about soccer. I know nothing about this game. I thought that the tide had turned. I was like, okay, that's it. This is it. And you know, that
There
was
were there
definitely,
were four definitive momentum shifts
yeah,
in that
in
match.
that game. And if Mkhitaryan had not lifted his leg so high when he was running, Inter would have won that game.
Yep, literally.
They would have won that game.
Literally. Because
Mm-hmm.
the offside was, well, here's your big toe.
Yeah, I don't. And
That
again,
was
that gets you back to the point where they go, you need a gray area with offsides because I personally don't think that should have been called offsides. Because also, I get it, your shoe and your knee are things that can score a goal and your hand isn't, but the hand was in front of Mkhitaryan. And look, I got a soft spot for Mkhitaryan. He came into Arsenal when Arsenal was really bad, and he wasn't great, but he had to be one of the top 3 players for Arsenal, and that's not where he's best suited. And
no.
he played very well for Arsenal. And the Europa League final situation was sad, and I felt really bad for him having to go through that, where that final was played. And Arsenal, of course, ended up losing that game. But I hate the word deserve. I hate that word. But that was his goal. That could have been his moment, and it should have been. I think he's got to be in his mid-30s by now.
He
And
is because I
yeah,
remember I remember him at Shakhtar
at
Donetsk.
Shakhtar, yeah.
He was, correct me if I'm wrong, he was on the club Dortmund teams, right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah,
He went from there to Manchester United.
I did,
Yeah,
which made no sense. Then
right.
to
And then
Arsenal.
came to Arsenal. Yeah. So, but back and forth though with that game. I mean, you watch that game and you just go, these 2 teams are better top to bottom than those 2 teams.
Yep.
And also, again, Chesney, I'm happy for you.
Yeah,
I'm very happy for you.
one way or another, I was watching that match and I was like, one way or another, a Polish guy is going to win the Champions League this year.
Yeah. But
And I,
Chesney's already got a double. He's already got a double.
yeah,
And look, he
yeah,
had retired, and I personally think he got ran out of Arsenal unfairly. And he was a little erratic, but I still go out, I'm like, this guy is still a top 10 goalie in the world. He still is. So what? He smokes a cigarette. He plays goalie. He doesn't run anyway. Who cares? And so I'm happy for him to have this. And also, what people don't realize about Chesney, and he's a goalie, he's 34.
yeah,
He's not old by goalie standards.
no.
He's not. So, I'm really, really glad that he ended up in this situation, and I'm very happy for him. But I think that, eyes are going to be glued for this second game, the second
Yeah.
semifinal. I mean, it's at Camp Nou. And
Oh, it's at the San Siro.
no, this game was at the San Siro.
No.
Was it?
This is Barcelona, man.
You got to be kidding me. I thought it was at the San Siro. No,
No,
it wasn't. This was at the San Siro.
What about that?
I'm pretty sure it was. See, now we gotta look this up.
That's what cell phones are for. Nah,
Okay,
man.
no, no, you're right. This was a
Yeah.
Camp Nou. Okay, okay. Um, I got it confused. You know why? I was looking at the game that's happening next because I was like, no, they're on top. That's
Ah,
the team. But
yeah.
yeah, I have my screen was messed up. No, my screen wasn't messed up. I read it wrong. Don't blame the screen. The screen just does what you tell it to do. But still, you know, I Denzel Dumfries had a fantastic game. He's
Yeah.
really, really, really. I mean, this is why you can never count the Dutch out of anything. Because whenever you think the Dutch probably are on the some guy emerges that you probably haven't heard of, and you go, well, wait a minute, who's that guy? So
Or write off or judge people at their time at Spurs.
mhm.
That's not a good indicator of
No, you can't. Well,
yeah.
first of all, I think that who's the Croatian guy? I can never remember names when I'm trying to remember the names. For Real Madrid who's like 40 now. And he played for
Oh,
Spurs.
Modric.
Modric, he was a Spurs player, and then
Yeah.
and goes to Real Madrid, and they're like, wow, this guy's the best midfielder in the world. So, it's that goes without saying. But yeah, but I am gonna go because it's getting a little late here, and I would be remiss if I didn't speak about it. But you can list all of the accomplishments of Lamine Yamal in the past 12 months, and it is absolutely astounding. But I'm looking at this going, is this 17-year-old kid the best player in the world right now?
Well, there came a point, and I've been kind of saying this for about the last 12 months, but
Mm-hmm.
it really came home. Wasn't even the goal he scored, which was
Which
fucking
was
silly.
which he did, and he scored that goal a couple of weeks. It was almost the exact same shot. The way if he cuts in 3 feet with his right shoulder facing the goal, shots with his left. Watch out. That's it. Doesn't matter how many defenders are there. He seems to be able to thread a needle with his left foot. It's insane.
It wasn't even so much that, it was the assist for what should have been a goal about
Mhm.
5 minutes later. And I was like, this is deja vu. It's the end of the semester. I'm drinking a beer. I'm watching Barcelona in the Champions League, and I come to the realization, and this realization that this goes back to when I was in grad school. Barcelona have arguably the best player in the world, and he's a goddamn teenager.
Mm-hmm.
No, I feel
Yeah.
like I'm in 2006 again.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is the same thing.
And the difference is though, there is a big difference between 19 and 17.
Yes, there
There
is.
is a big difference.
Yes, there
This
is.
kid is 17. He's 17. And when he would touch the ball, you would see the inter defenders, the butt cheeks tighten up a little bit, man. It's just like, okay, what's he gonna do? And the play he had where he fakes a cross, goes to the touchline, fakes another cross, and then cuts it back in. And the goalkeeper had to save that because that would have been his second goal. Was
Yeah.
an astounding play.
And the
Just an
crazy
astounding play.
and the crazy thing about that is the goalkeeper, I don't think he intended on say. I think that was
No, he just
one of those, yeah, like so
and
he
hits the post. I mean,
he's immense. He is
yeah,
simply immense.
yeah,
And in a we were all worried a little bit, like Messi's on the way out.
yeah,
Ronaldo's effectively in semi-retirement.
right.
For whatever reason, maybe because he's Polish, Lewandowski was never built up to be
Which he should have been, and that's
he
that's a
should have
that's a
been.
that's a that's. I mean, it's a shame that Lewandowski is getting the same treatment, or it's like him and Mo Salah just because they're not from the right country. Just like
Exactly. I was
you can
literally
you
about
could
to say
throw you could probably throw Yaya Toure in that
Yaya
conversation as well.
Toure
Yeah,
before them,
yeah.
exactly. So like is this void of like who's going to be the next great player?
Mm,
This guy's the guy.
I do too.
I really think this
I
guy
do
is
too.
the guy.
Yeah, but you haven't seen a 17-year-old do this. We haven't. This is
And
Pele
not
kind of
at
stuff.
this and not at this
Not
level.
at Yeah.
Not at this level.
This is Pele kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the only reason why I'm saying Pele is because back in the 80s when I was a child, that was the only soccer player any American ever even talked about. So the fact that you've heard all those mythical stories that he loved to perpetuate, and he brought the game to the United States in a manner that nobody else could have. But we didn't know who George Best was, who was playing for the Cosmos. We didn't know who any of those guys were. We all knew who Pele was. And I'm going, no, 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 no. You need to pay close attention to what you're seeing here. Really, really, really close attention, because this kid is on the world stage like that has never existed. Because the world just every year the world gets smaller, and he's on a world stage that has never existed. And you see this kid out there with braces, and he's still got his teenage skinny body, and he is dominating the game in a manner that, let's not forget, 10 months ago during the Euro, everyone's like, Spain must really be lacking players. They're starting a 16-year-old. What's wrong with Spain? And they didn't lose a game. What's wrong with Spain? That's what happened. You were like,
and he was as integral as uh Rodri in
yeah,
securing that title.
yeah. Him, Rodri, and Nico Williams were the
Yeah,
ones that secured that title.
yeah,
And yes, but that's the crazy thing is like by 4 games in, everyone's going, okay, what he's still starting. What's
yeah.
going on here? And then you're like, okay, well, anybody can get a little run. It's still Spain. You have all that support. Let's see what you do at Barcelona.
Well, and it that tournament is where he also won me over too, because I'm
Yeah,
like,
he won me over.
this kid is single-handedly changing the way that I have watched Spain play
Yeah,
2 decades.
right.
Spain went from tiki-taka possession to, no, we can be direct because this
Mhm.
guy allows a 16-year-old allows us to be direct.
Yep, yep, yep. And um, another sort of heir apparent that's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle, who's playing well too, is Ansu Fati.
Yes, well, he was
We've forgotten about him.
we had forgotten about him because he had been built up.
Yeah,
And one thing, the real hero for Barcelona here, give Hansi Flick his
yeah. Give him
flowers.
his
Like,
flowers.
I know the shine on him kind of went off because he didn't do what he should have done with the Germany job and acted profoundly weird towards the end with the Germany job. But like, he's taken again, going back, Yamin Yamal changing how Spain plays. Here's a guy who's brought German getting pressing football,
Mm-hmm.
Barcelona, and it
Mm-hmm.
works.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and we've been saying for a couple years on this show, maybe Barcelona needs that. Maybe doing it back to stagnation,
Right.
Barca way.
Right.
That's been figured out.
Right.
This is not your older brother's Barcelona,
No, it's not.
and they
No,
are
it's not.
fun.
They're
They're
fun and they're
fun.
young. They're
Yeah.
young. And you know, this I mean this the as Messi was starting to slow, he was leaving, the spotlight was always going to be on Barcelona, especially when Cristiano Ronaldo left and went to Juventus. So now you're sitting there going, okay, the spotlight then shifted back to Real Madrid. And because you had a controversial player who's very good in Vinicius Jr., and then of course you bring in who I think is the best midfielder in the world with Jude Bellingham. And so now you got a club, okay, they're back. They're back. And then they're coming, and then they won the treble and everything like that. I'm not sure they won the treble last year. Maybe they did win the treble last year.
They did, yeah.
So I don't think anyone was expecting this Barcelona team to kind of like leapfrog them so quickly as far as the team to watch on the world stage. But that Copa del Rey final was fantastic. That was a great game. And then to piggyback that game to this game, back to back, in a game they didn't win. And a game they were down 2-0. And a game they probably should have lost. But still, we're still sitting here talking about Barcelona. We're talking about Barcelona because Barcelona is like, we found him. We found him. And the fact that he is Spanish and he is African is like you got it now. You got it. You're going to have all eyes, and that kid has basically shown you that he can handle the spotlight
Yeah,
because it's never going to get more intense than it is now.
it's not just his play on the pitch, it's his just composure.
His
He
composure.
is way more mature.
Yeah, and his
than-
dad isn't all up in the camera. His dad is
No,
like, nah,
no,
yup, he's
no,
not.
no.
He's not. His
And
dad seems like a pretty chill guy.
I point to the
I think
guy
his dad's younger than me. Jeez, I'm getting
who's
old.
going to be the next young great hope. He's in some ways he's so much the anti Neymar.
Yeah. Oh God, that's a
So many
great,
ways.
great way to put it. Yeah.
He's the anti Neymar.
I think though that I mean this is a good thing to end on, but I do think that if you had to tell me that I could take one player right now, I mean you got to take that. You got to take him. I think that's got to be the kid. You got to take the kid.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
Grant, I still think that Mo Salah deserves to win the Ballon d'Or. I believe that, but I think we're watching somebody that's going to take over world football in a way that everyone expected Mbappe to. And
Yes.
it's not Mbappe's fault. It's not. This guy's already won a World Cup. He's finally won a World Cup. I mean, the only thing he hasn't won is a Champions League because he spent too many years in PSG. But there's like the smile, the braces. You know, it's just kids all over the place are talking about him in a manner that I've never heard before. And I've been a teacher for 20 something years and I've never heard this. So this is definitely going to be fun to pay attention to and fun to watch. And again, Barcelona does not have to win the Champions League this year. They don't. They don't have to win. They've done enough to market this team that I know they've had a lot of financial struggles. People are going to start throwing money at that club now.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. Professor Matt, any final thoughts?
No, glad to be back in the saddle. Watch out for a episode with me and Cam just exclusively talking about Liverpool and Celtic and what sort of a season recap and what to expect during the summer. And episode 3 of the decolonization series, but the second on the 66 World Cup. This time about the North Koreans that surprised everybody. That should be.
Yep.
I should have that out
until they ran into Eusebio, but
Eusebio happened. In about 2 weeks. So
okay, wonderful.
There'll be stuff.
Wonderful. Yeah. And, I'm going to get in touch with you because I share with you some things. My life has been extraordinarily busy, but I'm going to be getting much more content out this summer as well. So I'm looking forward to,
after we wrap. Yeah. Shoot me a text.
Yeah. I'll shoot you a text. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank Cam for coming out and giving us his update on Scotland and just sharing Cam. You know, I love having Cam on here. He's such a calming and presence and he speaks so eloquently about a league that a lot of people are pretty unsure about, but his insights are always unbiased, clear, and he can speak about situations there and that are easily adaptable to other similar leagues around the world. So Cam, thank you so much for coming on. And as always, Professor Matt, I genuinely love talking to you on these shows. I planned for us to talk for about an hour, and here we are still talking. But again, keep rolling out the great content. I listen to it every time it comes out. And, though you will not make me a Liverpool supporter, I can honestly say that the team I dislike the least after, I would say that the team that bothers me the least that seems to be a direct rival of them is Liverpool. So
it's mutual.
It is. Arsenal and Liverpool seem to. I know a lot of Liverpool fans, and they're all like, "Well, y'all don't bother me so much." So.
It's like, well, how do you? I have a student who sits literally right up front this semester, is a big Arsenal fan, and I guess at one point during the semester they asked that, and I'm like, well, "You're okay. You guys, the only thing stopping Man United from conquering the world, coming up."
Yeah.
I'm cool with that. I have no feelings pro or against. You're just a team from London.
Yes, and you're just a team from Merseyside. But I can honestly say though, but you know what? I missed the game when Liverpool won the cup, and I actually was like, no, I'm gonna turn it on, and I rewatched the whole thing top to bottom because I really wanted to see it. Plus, and look, I won't lie, I'm a huge fan of Mo Salah. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the history of the game. But for everything, for the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, and for all the guys who have come onto this show, we are actually getting some things in the work. We're going to get the full crew back. We're going to get this show back up and running to its full capacity again. So, and hopefully we can grab some more listeners over the summer. So for everybody with the Too Many Guys Soccer Show, I'm Stead, and thank you all. And I will talk to you next time. And to quote our esteemed normal host, Mike, we did all right this week. Hopefully we'll do better next time. Good night, everybody.